You woke up this morning, and before your feet even touched the floor, you checked your phone. Maybe you read a headline. Maybe you doom-scrolled for 6 minutes without realizing it. Maybe you just stared at the ceiling, wondering why getting out of bed felt harder than it should. Here's what nobody tells you. That feeling, that quiet, heavy weight sitting on your chest before the day even begins, has a history. A very, very long history. And it doesn't start with social media. It doesn't start with capitalism. It doesn't even start with civilization. So here's the question we need to ask today. Did ancient humans, people who had no bills, no bosses, no Instagram, get depressed too? And if they did, what does that tell us about the darkness we carry right now? The most common thing people say about depression is that it's a modern problem. We blame screens, we blame isolation, we blame processed food, broken sleep schedules, and the fact that we work jobs we never chose. And sure, all of that matters. But there's a massive assumption buried inside that argument. The assumption is that before all of this, humans were fine. They weren't. In 2019, researchers at the University of New South Wales published a landmark analysis of ancient skeletal remains and early cultural artifacts. Their conclusion was striking. The neurological architecture for depression, the brain chemistry, the stress response systems, the patterns of social withdrawal is not modern. It is ancient, possibly as old as Homo sapiens itself. Let that sit for a second. Depression isn't a glitch in the modern machine. It may be a feature of the human mind, one that evolved for a reason, in a world so different from ours that we can barely imagine it. That's the first twist, and it only gets stranger from here. Let's go back, not to ancient Rome or ancient Egypt. Let's go back much further, about 70,000 years, give or take. A group of maybe 20 humans is moving across the landscape. They're lean, they're sunburned, they're following the animals, following the water, following the season. There's no concept of Monday. There's no rent due. The sky at night is an explosion of stars, and the fire crackles low, and these people know every face around them by name. Sounds peaceful, right? Now watch one of them stop walking. She's falling behind the group. She's eating less. She's stopped talking the way she used to. She sits at the edge of camp and stares at nothing. The others notice. Some of them bring her food. One of the elders sits beside her without speaking. What she's experiencing has no name yet, but we would recognize it immediately. The biology of depression is not a modern invention. The same neurochemical systems that go quiet in a depressed person today, the serotonin pathways, the dopamine reward loops, the HPA axis that governs our stress response, all of that machinery existed in our ancestors, fully formed, just as capable of breaking down. A 2021 study published in Molecular Psychiatry traced the genetic variants associated with major depressive disorder back hundreds of thousands of years through genomic analysis of ancient DNA. The genes were there. The vulnerability was there. Long before agriculture. Long before writing. Long before anything we'd call modern stress. But here's the part that genuinely changes how you might think about all of this. Depression may have been adaptive. Evolutionary psychiatrists, a small but fascinating field, have argued for decades that what we call depression isn't just the brain failing. In certain ancestral contexts, the symptoms of depression may have actually helped people survive. Think about it. When ancient humans faced a threat they couldn't solve, a famine, a territorial conflict, a loss of status in the group, the depressive response kicked in. Withdrawal, reduced appetite, lowered energy, hypervigilance. These aren't random malfunctions. In the right context, they're strategic. Withdrawing from dangerous social conflict preserves your life. Eating less during a famine slows your metabolism. Ruminating, that painful loop of anxious thinking, may actually help the brain work through complex, unsolvable problems. Dr. Paul Andrews, an evolutionary psychologist at McMaster University, called this the analytical rumination hypothesis. The idea is that depression is the brain's way of forcing deep focus on a serious problem, shutting down everything else until you figure out a way through. For our ancestors, that could mean the difference between life and death. We also know this. Ancient humans grieved deeply. At a burial site in Kafze Cave in Israel, dated to roughly 100,000 years ago, archaeologists found a child buried with the antlers of a fallow deer placed carefully in its arms. That wasn't an accident. That was a ceremony. That was love, outlasting death. Grief and depression share the same neural circuitry. And grief, clearly, is not new. The Neanderthals, our evolutionary cousins, buried their dead with flowers, according to some interpretations of the Shanidar cave findings in Iraq. Whether you find that interpretation fully convincing or not, what's undeniable is this. Early humans cared about each other's suffering enough to mark it, to make it matter. So they felt loss. They felt the weight of hard seasons. They experienced social rejection because being cast out from the group in the ancient world wasn't just painful, it was a death sentence. Status, belonging, connection. These weren't luxuries, they were surviving. And here is perhaps the most important thing we know about ancient depression, something that modern neuroscience is only now beginning to relearn. They didn't face it alone. Small band hunter-gatherer societies, the social structure most of humanity lived within for 95% of our species' existence, had built-in mechanisms that we've largely dismantled. Constant physical proximity, shared work, communal sleep, rituals around loss, elders who held memories, storytelling that made suffering feel meaningful. Research on modern hunter-gatherer communities like the Kungsan of the Kalahari and the Hadza of Tanzania show something remarkable. While these groups are not immune to depression, they have far lower rates of chronic, treatment-resistant depression than industrialized populations. Not zero, but lower. The difference isn't genetics. The difference is in structure, community, the knowledge that the fire is never yours alone to keep burning. We evolved inside that structure. Our brains expect it. And somewhere along the way, somewhere between the plow and the smartphone, we dismantled it piece by piece without quite noticing what we were losing. So here's what all of this means for you, sitting here right now. Depression is not evidence that you are broken. It is not proof that you are weak or that you failed at being human. It is one of the oldest experiences in the history of your species. People who lived in ways we can barely imagine. People who were strong and resilient and brilliant. They felt this too. But here's the harder truth. Ancient humans didn't have better brains than us. They just had better containers for their pain. They had proximity, ritual, continuity. They had people who would sit beside them at the edge of camp without needing to fix them. Just to say, I see you. You're still one of us. We have texts that go unread for 3 days. We have apartments where we don't know our neighbors' names. We have a word for the fear of missing out, and no word at all for the grief of being alone in a crowd. And maybe that's the real question this leaves us with. Not, did ancient humans get depressed? Because yes. Yes, they did. The question is, what did they understand about suffering that we have forgotten? Because somewhere between their caves and our cities, between their fires and our feeds, we became the most connected species in the history of the planet, and the loneliest. That handprint on the cave wall, the one pressed in red ochre 40,000 years ago, it wasn't just art. It was someone saying, I was here, I felt something, and I needed you to know. Some things about being human never change. Maybe that's terrifying. Or maybe, just maybe, that's the most comforting thing in the world. I'll let you decide. If this made you think, share it with one person who needs to hear it. And if you're carrying something heavy right now, you're not carrying it across history alone.